What's up, everybody? How many of you out there have ever worked in a toxic work environment? Or maybe you're thinking to yourself, I might be working in a toxic work environment now. Well, chances are if you're watching this video, you're probably working in some sort of a toxic work environment. But don't worry, there's good news. I've got a survival guide here that we can work through to potentially help you either get through it or move you on to the next best thing. My name is Matt with Elevating Yourself, and with 25 years of leadership experience, I have had my fair share of toxic work environments, and I have done my darndest to make sure that I have gotten my people and myself through them. So stick with me as we get through this. I think the first thing that we should be talking about is how to really identify if you're working in a toxic work environment. And honestly, it's not always as evident as you may think. Granted, there are those instances where, hey, are you about done in here? God. Like this jackass. Obviously, that's a toxic work environment, but they're not always that way. Sometimes they show up as passive aggressive, or maybe there's undertones in the things that they're doing or saying that make you think that you're actually working in a good environment, but the actions that the leaders present to themselves really aren't helpful or supportive in any capacity. I think one of the most important things in these types of scenarios is to make sure that you are aware of it early on so that you can start to think about what it is that you need to do to get through this. Because in this day and age, in this economy, it's not as easy as just running to the next job. Jobs right now, it looks like there's a lot of them. I mean, if you get onto some of these websites, it looks like there's hundreds of thousands of jobs out there. But I think all of us can agree that it's very hard to get into a new position. Now, it's not saying it's impossible, but you definitely have to plan ahead. Like I said, I think it's important to really be identifying these things early enough. Along with passive aggressiveness, sometimes bosses tend to not really set good boundaries. Maybe they're starting to text or call or email you when you should be off. Again, it's not to say that I'm not available for my people or my boss when I'm off of work, but I think it's important to be able to set strong boundaries. If they need it every once in a while, perfectly fine. If they're constantly asking for it, then we maybe need to talk about some other solutions that are out there. But again, if they're not setting good boundaries, that could definitely be a sign. And then finally, micromanagement. I know it's important, especially in a virtual environment sometimes, to not know what's going on and you want to be able to communicate with your people, but that doesn't mean you have to micromanage them. That just means that you have to, as a leader, set up good, strong communication with your team so that they know exactly what you need in order to do your job. And that doesn't mean that you have to follow up and find out, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? That can lead to so much frustration, and you don't need that. So the first thing that you can do in these types of situations is something called gray rocking, or having an inner sanctuary. Gray rocking is just kind of keeping interactions fairly dull so that you don't really have much to be able to interact with. I think that sometimes can keep people at an arm's length and really not cause any interactions, which can lead to more toxic interactions. And I think that's a good way of doing it. Now, again, I don't want you to completely seclude yourself from everything because that can lead to isolation, which I don't want anyone to feel. If you are feeling isolated, like you are the problem, then maybe there's something else there that you need to kind of work through. And I think it's hard, especially in a new work environment, to maybe find those people. I don't want you to just go out to the random people and say, hey, our boss is kind of a jackass, don't you think? I don't want anybody saying that. But it's important that you kind of feel your way around and see what else is out there and see who you can talk to confide in, because I think those are important pieces of every work environment. And the next thing is inner sanctuary. I don't personally use this, but I've read quite a bit about it, and I have a lot of people that get into looking at a calming mental state, and this is a way to kind of do that. When you get into situations that maybe feel toxic or are overburdening on yourself, what you do is you put yourself into a position where you can think about a place that makes you feel happy. Maybe looking at a beach or a mountain hike or something like that that you've done that has put you at ease. And just even doing that for 30 seconds can really kind of calm a situation down. But if you can't at that moment, then the next time you get a free moment, it's just about closing your eyes and understanding what it is that makes you calm and kind of finding that inner peace. And when you do that, you can really kind of lower your blood pressure and make the environment a little bit better for you so that you can kind of push forward. And the next thing is just questioning loyalty. And again, remember, you don't owe them anything. This is a very big tactic that some leaders use where they kind of put it back onto the workers there that they owe you something because that's what a loyal person in this job would do. But that is not necessarily the case. You don't owe anybody anything just because you've signed on to work there. Again, I've worked in numerous places where it is a very inviting environment. And I think that environment alone makes you want to be loyal. But just because you signed on to that job doesn't mean that you owe them anything at all. So don't fall into that trap. And I think it's important to remember that showing up and doing the job that you were hired on for should be enough. And again, I know that many leaders out there will argue that they want people that are going to go above and beyond each and every time. But I don't think a lot of times you are recognized for doing just the job that you were hired on for and doing it well. I think it's important that once you have that identified, your leaders should be coming to you and thanking you for that hard work. And again, I'm not saying that we all deserve pats on the back, but if you're doing the job that you were hired on for, then why don't you just stay off my back? Don't just come at me with wanting me to do more. I always think it's funny, and I see lots of videos out there that talk about how, guess what my reward was for doing my job? It was more work. And usually that doesn't come with a lot of extra pay. It's just not worth it in the end. And I think more and more people are looking at this as an avenue of working, is just doing the job that they were hired on for. And if they can utilize skills that benefit the company that they enjoy doing, and they want to do that, by all means, let them do it. And the next point this kind of leads into is quiet quitting and using this kind of as a strategic move. I talked about doing the job that you were hired on for, and that is a very common thing that we hear, especially with the new term quiet quitting. This is an opportunity for you to be able to do the essential pieces of your job, and that's pretty much it. Again, you want to be careful with this. I don't want people to do the very, very bare minimum, but I think you should be able to do your job and do it very well. And try to be as less of a procrastinator as possible when it comes to your job. That's one of the things that I've found to benefit me the most. I have been in toxic work environments, and there's been situations out there where my boss has asked me for things, and I try to get it to them as fast as I possibly can, because that will at least show that I am there to work with them. But again, when I'm giving them the information, I'm doing the work that's required of me. I'm not necessarily going above and beyond. And I think that should be fine. And again, there's the areas that I find a lot of value in that I want to be able to offer more. And when those situations come up that excite me, by all means, I'm going to do that, because that does give me that great momentum, that great motivation to do more. But again, that's on my own terms. It's not on theirs. But again, think about that. What is it that you can do to make sure that you get ahead of the game without really doing too much? And I think with quiet quitting, it really does allow you to protect your time. This gives you your job, your stability, hopefully, so that you can go off and do the things that you really love. And I think that's the main point. If you're going to work in this type of capacity, I want everyone out there to really be utilizing their off time from work to make it the most of their life. Do the things that you love to do. Travel, eat at good restaurants, eat at bad restaurants, whatever you want to do. But just make sure that you're utilizing that time wisely. If you are getting out of your job that sucks and you're going home and just hating life, sitting on the couch, staring at a blank wall, then something's wrong. You need to be talking to other people about that. I think that's a good sign for that. But again, if you are getting out of work, hating your job, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go have some fun. Trust me, it can make the world of difference, because throughout the day of hating your job or working in this toxic work environment, you have that vision of what's happening later down the road. I know what's going to happen come 6 o'clock tonight. I'm going to be hanging with my friends. I'm going to be listening to good music. Hey, I've got a trip scheduled next week. You've got all these things that can make you motivated to continue through that job. And it does make it easier. It really does. And then finally, I think it's important just to be documenting everything. In a toxic work environment, you don't know what can happen the next day. I have seen people lose their jobs because they had disagreements with their bosses. And I never want people to ever lose their job for any reason. And so I think it's important that as you start to see some of these things creep up, that you're keeping some sort of documentation around dates and times and specifics that happen. Not necessarily how you feel. I mean, it's fine to include that stuff, but it's really hard for people to be able to understand feelings of it. Instead, look at what the actions were. What did they do? What was the result of it? And make sure you're documenting that. And again, like dates and times are definitely important, because I think when you get your human resources involved, that's something that you're definitely going to want to do. And aside from the documentation piece of it, again, I don't want anyone to have to be working in a toxic environment. And again, if you see this, if you're watching this video and you're like, my God, this is what I'm doing right now and I hate my job. Again, I think that's a good sign that it's time for you to start looking for something else. And again, start right now. Get your resume updated, start looking on these websites, start applying for jobs. And again, like, don't just apply for 1 or 2 jobs. I think this is the time that you have to kind of get out there and really put your best foot forward, whatever you want to do. And I think this also gives you a good opportunity to maybe look for something that you kind of enjoy. I'm not saying that you want to always look for just a job, but again, like, I think it's easier for us to find a job that we can work complacently in and then enjoy our life. And so look for opportunities like that. Look for different types of work that maybe allow for that you can just come in and do this 9 to 5 and then leave and be done with it. I think there are jobs out there like that. Now, you may not love it. Trust me, you may not love it, but that's okay. You're going to really enjoy what it gives you and what it affords you in the end. Thanks again for watching today. Hopefully you were able to take away some great things. Again, if you're in a toxic work environment right now and you do not see the light at the end of the tunnel, make sure you've got a good exit strategy. Don't just sit there and take it day after day. And again, if you're in a dead-end situation or you need advice and you need someone to talk to, please feel free to reach out. I want everyone to be supported as much as possible, but make sure you're also using your support structure along the way too. Don't forget to check out a couple of other videos I've got posted. I'll link them right here. Thanks again for watching. Remember, elevating yourself to the next level, it starts with a single step. Make sure you're taking that step today. We'll see you next time.